Hi, folks. Welcome to Thursday's lecture time. So, for today's class, I asked you to read Dershowitz's The End of Solitude, then Pennington's article on technology and literacy, but then also the chapter in Habits of the Creative Mind. And you'll notice that there's kind of a theme running between Dershowitz and Habits of the Creative Mind in particular, and that is this idea of the need for solitude in writing, or as Virginia Woolf says, a room of one's own. And this is a more meditative moment in our class, not so driven on skill sets, but more habits of mind. And this idea of needing to have space and solitude, not loneliness, but solitude, as a way to observe the world and synthesize it so that we can reflect critically on what's happening around us. And they come at it from very different ways of thinking. And so I wanted to make sure that we had vantages of this idea of what makes for good thinking, which leads to good writing, from various perspectives. So we have the Habits of the Creative Mind section called Making Space and Time, Dershowitz's The End of Solitude, and then Pennington's article on the virtues of technology and how it could potentially enhance or evolve literacy. And so the second discussion question that I'm having you all do is particularly related to just kind of thinking about these articles, synthesizing them together, making up your own determinations about what you're reading, and maybe even engendering some of these ideas into your own practice, maybe even now or later. These are considerations because we have to remember that writing is not just a product, it's also a process. And the more we think about the process, the more we might begin to create habits of mind that work to serve us best when we have to engage in the product making, which is the writing itself. And so that's what our readings largely are covering for this week. I'm going to let you just engage with them. Obviously, engage in the discussion question that I've posted for this week. Let you just have a moment for that. What I also wanted to cover, though, in this day's lecture was what we have coming up. You might be engaged in your observations at the moment, and you're going to be kind of reporting your findings on that in that thinking paper. But next week, we begin the first kind of big assignment towards our subject matter for the research project that we're going to be doing over the course of the quarter. And that is the documentary news story. This isn't due until next Sunday, so there's quite a bit of time between now and then, but you know how it goes. It happens quickly, and this is perhaps one of the larger assignments in the class, which is why I wanted to discuss it briefly in this lecture and then kind of point you to some resources. So I want to contextualize the documentary news story and then make sure that you all are clear in kind of what it's attempting to achieve and how it's going to move you into the next developmental stage of your project overall. Objectivity and denotation are two things that we've talked about a lot, and we certainly talked about it quite a bit in the first quarter. And they've always been difficult to achieve in representative media, as we are prone to bias in our research and language, even when we dedicate ourselves to the effort. We practiced this last quarter quite a bit, right? Doing denotative description, noticing how often our biases will betray us, even in the way that we perceive, and certainly in the language that we use to describe what we perceive, right? Of course, that's rhetoric. However, we are experiencing in our contemporary age a variation of this issue, and perhaps more egregious, largely inspired by these newer technology platforms like the internet and social media. These terms, alternative facts, fake news, spinning, we've heard them a lot. And by all intents and purposes, everyone agrees that they have occurred more. And it's because of the democratization of information, because we are all able to posit information out into the universe, that this has become something of note. And we have mentioned many times in the class the potentially dangerous effects of these mediated forms, and that these forms may be contributing to the current polarized socio-political circumstances of our country. Yeah? So, we must combat our inherent biases as much as we can when reporting information that is supposed to be fact, or at least based in fact. We must consider our research, our evaluative language, our presentation of information, so that it is as free from bias as we possibly can be. And this is our ethical kind of effort. This is our ethical duty as scholars in our contemporary age. And so, this next assignment, due on the 26th of April, is marrying this concern with a developmental aspect of your research project. So in this first formal part of your culminating project, you are to compose a documentary news story on your subject matter. That is either a video spot or a podcast, or something else if you want, but those are the two primary media that I think would be most effective. And they are to be roughly 10 to 15 minutes. This can be about whatever your subject matter is going to be. That relates overall to the research question that hopefully you are beginning to understand you want to pursue. Okay? You want it to serve as preliminary research on your subject of interest. So think of it as kind of like an investigative reporting. Okay? It's not an argument at all. As a matter of fact, I want you to not think about argumentation yet. This is merely a collection of facts that you are presenting based on a question that you have going into it. Okay? So you want to briefly introduce your subject. Why is the subject of interest? Right? Be rather general. Why is it relevant at the moment? This is kind of the so what aspect of your research. And you can imagine that could be really useful for your eventual paper. Yeah? 2, and this is most of what you want to do for this documentary news story, is include contextual research on your subject matter. Relevant history, an origin story, background information, contextual information that kind of creates definitions or nomenclature, terminology around your subject matter. And then any factual information that you think is relevant to your research. Okay? So basically kind of giving us an overview of what you're going to be exploring. Yeah? And then third, to come up with a series of dynamic questions that arise upon encountering this preliminary and contextual research. What is sparking your interest as a result of collecting this information together? Yeah? What is a mystery? What do you want to figure out? What is a conundrum? Consider any of these things, because they may coalesce into devising what your ultimate guiding question becomes that leads to the argument that you write later. Yeah? So this is kind of that preliminary research, collecting facts, putting them together and going, So essentially, this documentary news story is going to be like a Tootsie Roll. It begins with questions, right? What do you want to find out? What do you want to investigate? Great. Then you collect that information together and you present it to us in some kind of cogent and interesting way. And then you follow up with new questions that arise as a result of doing this research that probes a little deeper, gets into the mystery, makes you go, huh, what else can I examine as a result of performing this assignment? That's what this documentary news story is for. It's going to help you embark on deep research and to have guiding questions that become more nuanced, more specific, that emerge authentically, kind of from the collection of your information. Yeah? I want to emphasize this. This is not an op-ed story. There is no betrayal of opinion in this project at all. It must be objective. It must be informative. It must not be fake news. It must be true news that will help contribute to kind of the overall knowledge that will eventually be what inspires your argumentative project. So free of bias. Yeah? And this is to have works cited in MLA format as an attachment or imbued in the project itself. Okay? Now, like I said, this is a mediated project. It can be a video documentary, it can be a podcast. So in Camino, I have given you a ton of resources, ways to make podcasts, how to access podcast technologies, video information. And I've also provided examples of student work just to maybe give you an idea so you don't feel like you're in the dark, what students have done in the past. One of the things that a lot of students have utilized, and it is a wonderful resource, is technology resources through the library. They are still available, and if you would like a tutorial one-on-one with one of our technology librarians, they will provide it for you. So you can schedule one of those if you want. If you wanted to learn how to do GarageBand with someone, you can contact them and they'll set up a time and perform a tutorial with you. Or if you wanted even a tutorial on iMovie, which of course is pretty easy, yeah? But you're not alone in this. If you wanted me to provide you a tutorial, I can do so as well. We can just chat over Zoom or Google Hangouts. But even more apropos, I think, would be to access professionals that are at your disposal. These are the resources that Santa Clara provides. So at once, you're going to be satisfying an assignment for our class, and maybe also you are either kind of playing around with knowledge of certain applications that you already love playing around with and you can utilize, or it gives you the opportunity to learn how to utilize. Now, just know, I'm not grading you on how expert editing you're providing, okay? Remember that the research and the objectivity or the denotation of the assignment is still what is most important. That's what I'm grading you on. The depth of your research, the ability to ask good questions, to kind of assemble this information in a way that is clear and developmental. That's what you're being assessed on. But of course, this provides you a wonderful opportunity to play around with a technological application that could be rather useful in the future. So I want you to be able to have fun with this. But of course, it takes some time. Okay? So I wanted to just kind of provide coverage of this now so that you can begin to conceive of what you'd like to do. And then as soon as, of course, you have kind of plugged into what you think your subject matter, your topic is going to be for your research project overall, this provides you that first hurdle to kind of jump through. Cool. Look at my my documentary news story supplemental module. It's right after week 2 and before week 3. It has all kinds of information that could help you with this assignment. And of course, it's going to be the major assignment that you're going to be doing for the rest of this week and then into all of next week. Have fun with this. Ask me questions. I love using these medias as ways to kind of beef up my research, and just to make it more interesting, that it doesn't have to be just in the form of a research report that's written. We can utilize these kind of narrative forms and these templates for popular media like podcasts, like documentaries, short documentaries. We can use them to enhance our own ideas and discussions. Have a blast. Contact me if you need, and have a good rest of the week.